Hello, Yogita madam.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Hello, Pranav sir.
Yes, ma'am.
We can start now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you start, ma'am? Yogita,
Yes,
ma'am?
sir. Sure.
Just a minute.
Okay. Shall I stop sharing my screen?
No issue.
No, sure. Okay.
A very good morning to one and all. I, Pranav Chipalkatti, on behalf of JSPM's Rajarshi Shahu College of Engineering, Department of Electronics and Telecommunication, heartily welcome you all for the second session of day 6 of 2 weeks faculty development program on artificial intelligence and its applications in biomedical engineering. Today we have with us an eminent speaker, Dr. Yogita Chitrao, to deliver session on topic biomedical image processing. I heartily welcome you, madam, on behalf of ENTC department. It's my pleasure to introduce her today. She is currently working as an assistant professor in Department of Electronics and Telecommunication. She has a total of 15 years of teaching experience in Yashchandra Chavan College of Engineering, Nagpur. She completed her PhD in 2017 and MTech in 2006 from Yashwantharao Chavan College of Engineering, Nagpur, RTM Nagpur University. Speaking of her awards and achievements, she has two project proposals on the theme of women's safety and were shortlisted in International Humanitarian Technology Project Competition 2018 under the aegis of IEEE WIE International Leadership Summit at Dhaka, Bangladesh. One project was titled Shakti, a complete app for women, which won the first prize in the competition. She has filed two patents. Then she is a winner of a Women Bhaskar Award in the category of education by the hands of Mrs. Amruta Fadnavis and Nagpur Mayor Mrs. Nanda Jichkar at Radisson Blu in May 2017. She has received a scholarship of €1,000 from medical imaging using bio-inspired and soft computing Marie Curie Initial Training Network. She has received travel grant for paper presentation in IEEE HTC 2018 in Colombo, Sri Lanka. She has presented papers in reputed conferences at IIT Bombay, IIT Dhanbad, IISc Bangalore, ISA Calcutta, then Singapore, Belgium, and Sri Lanka. She has 16 research publications in Scopus with citations of 102 and H-index of 4. She has 9 research publications in Web of Science with citation of 44 and H-index 2. She holds 4 copyrights by the Copyright Office, Government of India. In all, she has a total of 35 publications. She has published a book chapter named Classification of MRI Brain Images Using Cosine Modulated Wavelets uh, in Springer and in the journal Advances in Computer Science and Information Technology. She also has amassed big research funding from AICTE, RPS, and DST of amount 4.67 lakhs and 7.91 lakhs respectively. She has also amassed research funding of $40,000 from USAID for rapid diagnosis of frail and sick newborns with handheld vital sign monitor in collaboration with Harvard University, USA. She is a recognized reviewer in various elsewhere journals, and she was a speaker at International Conference on Transforming Lives and Healthcare through Technology 2017 at DMIMS Varda. We are fortunate to have you with us today, ma'am. I welcome you once again and request you to start the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this introduction. It was a very nice introduction. So I will just try to give my best for this presentation. So the brief outline of my presentation will be having some the brief on AI, ML, and deep learning. Then what are the building blocks of CNN? That is convolutional neural networks, which are very much widely used for medical image processing nowadays. Then how deep learnings are playing vital role in image processing, and the what are the open challenges, open research and future scope of the medical issues. Biomedical applications will look for. And then what are the quantitative evaluation parameters which we can use for medical image analysis, and then one case study of brain MR image analysis. So with introduction, so now we know what is artificial intelligence. It is basically any technique which enables computer to mimic the human behavior. And if we talk about machine learning, it is basically a subset of AI techniques which uses statistical methods to enable the machines to improve the experience. Now, so the basic difference is AI. In AI, we just AI is the technique which gives us the work which machines can do in a smarter way. And machine learning, we give access to the machines so that it should learn through its own experiences. And then we are having deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, which makes the computation of multi-layer neural networks feasible. So in all, we can say that deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and then machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. Now, what artificial intelligence can do, suppose so we are having the data input as data, then we'll have action as output. If sensors are there, then there will be a movement as output. And for images, we can have one application as a text, so image to text conversion. So all this can be possible with the help of artificial intelligence. Again, artificial intelligence, they are classified in three different categories. So there is artificial narrow intelligence, in which we can have a task which is only specific. So for specific task, we can have the intelligence which is greater than human intelligence, but it performs a specific task only. But if machine which has the ability to solve any problem, any general problem, then we group them in a category of general intelligence. And if an intellect that is much smarter than the best human brain in all field, in all field of scientific creativity, general wisdom and social skill, then it comes to the category of super intelligence. And if we'll go for the machine learning basics, so we are having two stages there, training and testing. So for training, we have labeled data, and then we apply some machine learning algorithms, and through which machine learning model learn through the experiences. And if you give some prerequisites, some data which needs to be predicted or classified, then we are having output as a prediction or classification. So we can provide various techniques that can learn from the machine, that can learn from the data itself. So this is basically the main basics of machine learning algorithm. So what can be the learning processes of machine learning? We are having supervised learning, wherein we all are having label training sets. So label data is required for supervised learning. As an example, we are having this email spam detector with training set of already labeled emails. So automatically our emails are transferred to this, transferred as or ticked as a spam emails, because we are having labeled data set for that. And then unsupervised learning is the next process, wherein we discover the pattern in unlabeled data. So based on some features, some similar features, they group them in different clusters. So cluster similar documents based on the text content can be the example of unsupervised learning. And then there is third learning process, which is called as reinforcement learning. So it is based on some feedback or rewards. So, for example, the machine can learn to play the chess by winning or losing. So, by looking at the characteristics of winning, how which steps gives you winning and which steps causes you losing. So that will, in that way, we can learn, means machine can learn itself. So these are few applications of machine learning. Classification task is there. Suppose you want to classify diseases into normal and abnormal, so that can be performed by machine learning. Regression for predicting, uh, it is playing a very important role in many applications, like estimating the price of a car, or what can be the fuel generation from the car, depending on some input parameters. Clustering is one of the applications. So depending on the features, similar features, it groups them in different clusters. And this anomaly detection, this is widely used nowadays in medical image processing. So if we are having some noisy data, so we need to detect this, so that we can have a proper clusters of the input data. So these are few applications of machine learning. In short, the applications can be like this. Suppose we are having input as a pictures, and then what will be the response in any machine learning algorithm? So response can be like this: are there any human faces? That means we need to detect the human faces only. And where it plays an important role, it plays an important role in photo tagging. So nowadays we know in Facebook, this application is widely used. Suppose you're having input as loan application. So what will be the response? Will they repay the loan? What is the prediction? How much, what is the probability that they will repay the loan? And depending on that, the bank can approve the loan, or it can disapprove the loan. Audio clip, suppose your input is audio clip, and then what the response will be transcript. So this is having the application is speech recognition system. And then another application may be English, if you're having English sentences and you're converting it to the French sentence or any other language, so it has application of language translation. Now, the era of artificial intelligence was from 1950s to 1980, somehow in that range. And then machine learning plays the important role from 1980s to nearly up to 2010. But after that, what comes as the deep learning? So now, nowadays, deep learning is means many, in many applications we are using deep learning. So deep learning is a machine learning, so that teaches computer to do what comes naturally to human. And computer model learn to perform classification tasks. So basically for image classification, for text classification, sound classification, it is widely used, deep learning algorithms. And these models, they are learned by the large data set. So this is what is required for deep learning. It requires a large data set or labeled data, and some neural network architecture. So there are few architectures which are used in deep learning applications. Now, why this deep learning is important? Because nowadays it is observed that deep learning models or deep learning algorithms, they are achieving higher recognition accuracy, and it outperforms the humans in some tasks, like classifying the objects in an images. But the only problem with deep learning is that it requires the large amount of labeled data and the power, substantial computing power. But the high performance GPU, graphical units with parallel architecture, they are efficient for deep learning algorithms. And we are nowadays these GPUs are used with cloud computing. So if we have these GPUs along with cloud computing, so we can use the deep learning with reduced training time, which reduces from weeks to hours or less. So if simple CPUs are used, then it may take weeks. But if we use GPU with cloud computing, then the training required for any data set can be less. And nowadays, these are playing very vital role for image classification purpose. So these are few examples. These are few applications where deep learning is widely used. Social network filtering, fraud detection, image and speech recognition is there, audio recognition is there, computer vision applications, this medical image processing. Medical image processing, it is playing a vital role, bioinformatics, customer relationship management, drug identification, and many more. Here I have cited only few, but deep learning is playing a vital role in majority of the applications. So what is the difference in machine learning and deep learning? So basically the steps involved in machine learning is that we will be having some labeled data, then we'll extract the features. Okay, so that feature extraction step will be there, and then machine learning algorithms which will classify the input data in different classes. So this step is required, feature extraction step is required if we'll use machine learning. But with deep learning, the features are learned from the network itself. So this feature extraction step and algorithms, it is combined all together in deep learning. So in deep learning, basically convolutional neural networks are used, and those convolutional neural network itself learn the features from the image data itself. And that is the big difference. This extra step of feature extraction is not required in deep learning. But for that purpose, deep learning requires a large amount of labeled data so that the features are learned by the network itself. And as there is no means as such no feature connectivity, the networks are not required for feature extraction. So we can have that in deep neural network, the parameters, the learnable parameters which are required in normal artificial intelligence, normal neural network are more as compared to the convolutional neural network. We can see that in the subsequent PPTs. So when if you want to choose in between machine learning and deep learning, so machine learning offers the variety of techniques and models based on their applications. Size of data is very important, and the type of problem. And successful deep learning application requires large amount of data. So this is basically a concern with the deep learning applications, and it also requires half performance GPU. So again, it depends on if you're having a very small amount of data. So with biomedical image processing, this is main the drawback, because medical images, it is very difficult to collect a large amount of data. But nowadays, many companies are paying attention, and every hospitals are collaborating with the companies so that we can have this large amount of data. And hence deep learnings are used in biomedical image processing. So when to use depends on the application, size of data. Machine learning, when you're having very small amount of data, then you should go for machine learning. Also, if you are not having high performance computing devices, then also you have to go for machine learning algorithms only. So deep learning networks, it started with simple artificial neural network, then multi-layer perceptron neural network. So this artificial neural network, it was only a single, means one input layer and one output layer was there. Then comes your multi-layer perceptron, in which in input and output layer we had the hidden layers. This is also called as fully connected layer. Then comes the convolutional neural networks. So this this CNN architecture is widely used in deep learning. Recurrent neural networks are there, long short-term memory, generative addressing network, and then deep belief network. So depending on the application, all others network can be used. But basically, specifically for image classification, for image processing, the network which is widely used is convolutional neural network. So see here, in suppose we have only a fully connected network. So this is multi-layer perceptron. Input layer is there and output layer is there. So in between we are having two hidden layer. So every neuron is connected to the every neurons of hidden layer. So if we'll go for the computational complexity of such networks. So for example, suppose at the input we are having 784 input neurons. So basically, let us take for 30 by 30 image. If you are having a image size of 30 by 30, so then also you will require nearly 600 neurons. Okay, So with that, keeping in that mind, suppose you are having 784 inputs, and then at the hidden layer we are having 100 neurons, and hidden layer 2 you are having 20 neurons, and the output side you are having 10 neurons. So the trainable parameters which will be required in this fully connected neural network will be n plus k. Now this k is for bias, this one is for bias, and for any network, artificial neural network, that one bias is there with in input as 1. So trainable parameter will be n plus 1. N is the neuron in the input side, k is the neuron on the output side. So you can see for such network, the trainable parameters which are required is this, nearly 80,730. So this will cause means complexity, and the computation power will also be there. High computation power will require. But there is convolutional neural network, which is also called as CONVNet. They are the special kind of multi-layer neural networks, and they are designed to recognize the visual patterns directly from the pixels itself, the pixel of images, and with minimal processing, with minimal pre-processing. And in convolutional neural network, the trainable parameters which are required, they are independent of image size. That means if suppose you are having the image of size 30 by 30, and you are having the image size of 100 by 100, so it is independent. It depends only on the convolutional filter which we are using. Okay, so that's why, as it is independent of this image size, the trainable parameters which are required for convolutional neural network is very less, and that reduces the computational complexity rather than this fully connected neural networks, and hence the CNNs are used. And the different types of CNN architectures are, these are LeNet, LXNet, ZebNet, GoogleNet is there, ResNet, and nowadays VGGNet, it is used for video sequences. So what can be the building blocks of CNN? So how the computational complexity, or how CNN works for any image processing task or image classifications task. So it has one convolutional blocks, then striding is there, padding, pooling, deconvolution, and then the transfer function, activation function, which is used in CNN is mostly ReLU function, rectified linear function is used as because of its though it is non-linear in nature, but its derivative is constant. So and that's why this ReLU activation function is used in CNN. So how this been processed? Let's see. So what happens? We are having the image. As I told you that convolutional neural networks, they are basically used for image classification, image analysis. So we'll be having this image of size m cross n, I mean. So through convolution, it reduces the size in xy direction. You can see the size, it is basically a downsampling, or we can say if it is somehow like Laplacian pyramid, or the subband decomposition, as in simple image processing task, wherein or wavelet filters, wherein we just go on multi-resolution analysis, so that resolution of images changes. But in order to have the information, the entire information, the width is changing. So we are making it one dimensional, but the number of columns will be more, so that all the information of this input image can be preserved. So this is somehow like downsampling, we can say, and that downsampling effect is because of this pooling operation. So this pooling operation causes you the information to be preserved along the one dimensional vector only, keeping all the information of image as it is. So we are increasing the depth, and the XY resolution we are going to reduce. So let us take, we are having this color image. So there will be 3 channels, and m cross n image is there. As this is the color image, so whatever kernels or filters, so convolution, we'll be using Yes. Am I? Is it clear? Means, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So the filters which we'll be using, those will also have the three channels. This RGB channels will be there, and after convolving, that means this filter after convolution operation is being performed, will get this one image only. Okay, and if suppose we are having two such kernels, so we'll get the two images at the output side. So it may possible that this one filter will giving you some information of this image, the second filter is giving you some another information of this image. So in CNN, what we do, we will be having many such channels, so that all the information of this image will be learned through the this filters or kernels itself. And just like here we are using two kernels, so the output side we are having two. Now what will be the dimension of this output image? So here it is M, and let us take here it is W. So as simple convolution, we know, if we are taking the convolution of two signals X and H, and we know if the length of X is L and length of H is M, then after performing one dimensional convolution, we get the length as L plus M minus 1. Okay, so somehow that same principle is been applied here, but here it is M minus W plus 1. So this will be number of, actually we'll be having the columns, and these many number of rows will be having at the output side. And how many kernels you are using, that will decide how many output images you will get at the output side. So that is what is convolution operation, which is the first operation being performed in deep neural networks. Then comes your striding. So striding means by how much distance you are passing those filters. Means suppose I'm using the filter of size 3 by 3. So I'm moving this filter by how much pixel length. So right now this is at this position. Okay, then I will move it to this position. So basically I have traveled the distance of only 1 pixel. Okay, but in case suppose initially it was at this position, but now I moved to this position. So I traveled a distance of 2 pixels. Okay, so that is nothing but striding operation. And this filtering we are applying, but by covering how much pixel distance at horizontal direction and in vertical direction. So after applying striding, the output size will be equal to this. So M is the original image size, W is the kernel size, filter size, divided by SW. So SW will give you, SW is nothing but the size or the length which you are traveling along X direction and along Y direction. So this is the formula with which we can obtain the output size. Okay. And next is padding operation. So padding operation, we just pad extra elements. Zero padding is performed in after striding operation, or both can be combined. Striding and padding can be combined. And and one more thing here, as this is performed in row wise as well as in column wise, so this 2 is there. So if padding is been done, then the output size will be M minus W plus 2W divided by SW. So this is the complete formula which will give you the size of the output image after performing convolution, striding and padding. After that, now we know after performing this striding and padding, the image size, and okay, so we'll be having all this. So next operation is what is pooling operation is performed. So pooling operation, there are various functions which are used, like max pooling is there, average pooling is there. We can perform mean pooling also. We can perform median pooling also. Suppose this image we are having, and we are using the size of 2 by 2. So what will be the output? We'll consider this 2 by 2 area. Okay. And then if you are using max pooling, so maximum pixel value in this 2 by 2 area is 11. So 11 is being assigned here. Then we are moving by 2 pixels. Now instead of moving to this location, okay, we are moving to next location also. Okay, so basically this is a sliding of 2 pixels. Okay, so in pooling also we can use sliding. So firstly we are use this 2 by 2 block. Okay, and then we move the distance of 2 pixels. So we are moving to this location, and then we are finding the maximum value, and maximum value from this location is 14. So this 14 will come here. Okay, so this is what the max pooling is there. Now you can clearly see this max pooling is reducing the size by 2. Actually, why 2? Because we moved the distance of 2 pixels here, and that's why the 4 by 4 image has become uh, 2 by 2. So it is basically a downsampling approach, or we can say it's a pyramid sampling. Pyramid shape is there, or Gaussian, in just like in Gaussian in wavelet filtering we have that multi-resolution analysis. So same operation. So nothing new is there in deep learning, but the same basic image processing application or basic image processing applications are being used with some other approaches. And if we are having average pooling, so in this 2 by 2, whatever will be the average, that will be assigned, that value will be assigned here. Then again we are moving by 2 pixels. So this, whatever will be the average, so that value will be assigned here. So this is what is pooling operation. Now pooling with stride. So as I told you, here we use the stride of 2 pixels. So we moved by a pixel of length of 2 pixels, but suppose here we are moving it only by 1 pixel length. Okay, so what will be the output again if we'll consider max pooling? So here this will give you the maximum value as 11. Okay, and now instead of moving it by 2 pixel, I'm moving this filter by 1 pixel length only. So now just look at this. So in this 2 by 2, the maximum value is 13. So this 13 will come here. Again, now this location. So again, maximum value is 14. Okay. So the output size is now, instead of 2 by 2, the size is 3 by 3. And how that size can be calculated? By using this formula, m minus w plus sw plus 1. Okay, you can apply this formula. Width we are used to, then sliding we have used 1 pixel length only, and the original size was 4 by 4. So by putting all those values, we can get the size of 3 by 3. So this is what pooling with the stride. And the activation function which is used is ReLU, rectified linear unit. And see here, there exists a non-linearity at this location only, at somewhere 0. But the derivative of this ReLU function is the constant function. That's why ReLU function is mostly used in CNN architectures. So based on those formulas which we have discussed, or those steps, the notations which are used are like this. Suppose actually any CNN architecture is described by using this notation. So 6C, 5W, 1S and 0P. So what will be the meaning? That means the image is being convolved with 6 channels. So there will be one image, and it is been and we are using 6 filters. Okay, so at the output now we'll be having 6 channels. The filter size, kernel size is of 5 by 5. Okay, that means the width and height is of 5 by 5. It is using a side of 1. Okay, that means we are moving with a distance of 1, and padding is 0. Okay, so if this is written in any convolutional neural network, then the meaning is this. It is channel is 6, kernel size, that is filter size, is 5 by 5, stride of 1 and padding of 0. So let's take an example. What will be the size of image, output image, wherein wherein the input image is passed through any convolutional neural network. So suppose we are having layer 1 as this convolutional network is this 6C, 7W, 0P and 1S. Okay. So if suppose your input image is passed through the CNN, that is convolutional neural network, with this configuration, what will be the output size? So let us consider that the image is of 32 by 32. Okay, and it's a color image. That means it will have 3 channels. So M in this case, M and N will be 32. C will be 3, initial C. Okay. And as it is written W7, 7W, that means the filter size is 7 by 7. Okay. And the output side, output kernels is 6. So the kernel number of channels are 6. So that is what K. Here padding is 0, no padding, but stride we are using 1. Okay, so if we'll put in that formula which I told you, so the width of output tensor will be by putting all those values 32 minus 7 plus 2 times 0. So we're getting output as 26. So your input image was of size 32 by 32 and it has become 26 by 26, but the channel length is now 16. Okay, so just I told you, in convolutional neural network we just go on reducing the spatial resolution. So XY resolution is been reduced, but we increase the depth so that we have the entire information of that image. And after this striding, padding, the next step is pooling. Okay, and suppose we are using max pooling. So what will be the meaning of this? Okay. 2W, that means we are using width of 2. Striding we are using 2 and padding 0. So after this convolution step, now your input, the image has become, image size was 26 by 26 into 6. Okay, so this will be your input to the pooling stage. So M and N are 26. Kernels are 6. Now how much width we are using? Width and height as 2, this 2. Padding is 0 and the striding we are using striding equal to 2 here. Striding equal to 2. So by applying this formula, your width of output tensor will be 13 by putting all those values, and height is also 13. But this will remain as it is. The kernel size is this 6 will remain as it is here. Okay. So earlier the input size was 32 by 32. After convolution step, it has become 26 by 26. And after max pooling, it has become 13 by 13 into 6. Okay. After convolution, the next layer is ReLU activation function is applied. Okay, so it will not change the size of input image. It will be same as it is, but depending on activation function, the values will be changed. And the last layer would be flattening layer. So flattening layer will just increase it, make it as one dimensional, that is 13 by 13 into 6. So your output will be of size 1 cross 1024. Okay. So this is how the convolutional neural network works. There is a mathematics involved. Okay, some calculations will be there. There will be some parameters, learnable parameters, but the learnable parameters will not depend on the size of input image. It is simply as per the formula. Actually, I haven't written here. The learnable parameters required for this step will be only 7. This what is the width of kernel? That is 7 into 7 into 3. So 49 into 3. These many learnable parameters will be required in convolutional neural network. Whereas if this would have been a fully connected neural network, then for this first layer only, we could have been required 32 into 32 into 3. So whatever this answer comes, that many learnable parameter would have been required for normal fully connected network. So this shows the computational complexity required for CNNs are very less as compared to FC, fully connected networks. So how these networks or these architectures means start in this converges. So basically, ImageNet projects they runs the annual software contest, which is known as ImageNet Large Scale Virtual Recognition Challenge, and where the software programs computes to correctly classify and detect the objects and scene. This is basically for image processing applications only. So in 1998, LeNet architecture was proposed, which was used to recognize handwritten numbers on checks, which are digitized in 32 by 32 pixels. And this was the first architecture which was proposed. Then in 2012, AlexNet won that competition, wherein the classification error was reduced from 26% to 15.3%. So they achieved the accuracy of approximately 85% in classifying the objects, in classifying the images. Then ZFnet won that competition with the error rate of 14.8%. In next year, GoogleNet, that is inception layer, won this competition with the error rate of only 6.67%. And then ResNet in 2015 with the error rate of 3.57%. So this ImageNet competition is there, which decides the which net would be best, or which net would be good for any image processing applications. So now, if we'll look for the market scenario or any career opportunities in machine learning or deep learning scenario, so you can see clearly here market for any machine learning, machine vision system. This is a report of this HIT 1309. So see here, the applications which involves media applications, surveillance, automotive graphics. So they have a market capture of $6 billion, and the coverage is 63%. But alone, medical image processing or medical image analysis is having a total contribution of 37%, and which has a market of $3.5 billion. Okay, so medical image analysis is playing a vital role in this market scenario. Now, which modalities we can use? We are having X-rays, ultrasound, computed tomography images are there, magnetic resonance imaging, nuclear imaging, that is PET, specs are there. Which clinical conditions are there? Radiology, cardiology, oncology, neurology is there, obstetrics and gynecology, breast mammography images. And the end users for these applications are hospitals, then diagnostic centers are there, and many research centers. They are working on this medical image processing. Okay. So we can have any, we as an fresh researcher, if we are going for any application, so we can think of about medical image analysis. So if you'll talk about healthcare sector, so interpretation of medical data is done by medical experts, and that we know. So whatever images are there, just they observe it, and then based on their observation, the interpretation is carried out. But there means the challenges over there is it's highly subjective, because the interpretation can vary from one person to another. Then medical images are very complex in nature. If we look for the ultrasound images, you can see no information we can gain from the ultrasound images. Extensive variations exist across the different interpretation, which is nothing but the subjectivity and the fatigue also. So fatigue can lead to the error, or which is very dangerous in case of medical healthcare sector. So you can see here, this is the image of liver ultrasound image. So basically the task is for the automatic liver segmentation. The goal would be what in this case, the automatic functional analysis of heart, and which will give the diagnosis in terms of improve workflow, reduce error, and reduce user variability. But the challenges here is that these almost all ultrasound images, they have very low signal to noise ratio. Ages are not clear, and the training set is also a major problem in US image ultrasound images. So this is again big problem with the ultrasound images. Then in MRI images, hippocampus segmentation is also one of the major application, which is very useful for the diagnosis of Alzheimer diseases. So that is playing an important role nowadays. But the challenges is that this hippocampus is of very small size, and it is surrounded by these complex structures of brain. And again, the low image resolution, mm, basically it has a resolution of only 1 by 1 by 1 mm, and in case of 1.5 Tesla and 3 Tesla. But though nowadays we are having machines of 7 Tesla, and that those machines gives you the good quality images, but then also there is a problem associated with these types of images. So now how deep learning can play the important role. Now various sources of images, we know we are having X-ray images, CT images, MRI scans are there, pathology images are there, and many image diagnosis task requires the initial search to identify abnormality. Basic aim is to identify the abnormality, then quantify the measurement, because we know if doctors assesses the image, it is simply a qualitative assessment. But if we'll provide some quantitative assessment, then it will be a great support to the medical professionals. And applications of deep learning in healthcare sectors can cover the problems ranging from cancer screening to disease monitoring to personalized treatment suggestions. So here in these all areas, deep learning plays a very important role. So now, what can be the challenges which occurred while applying the deep learning algorithms to the medical images? So the first challenge is the unavailability of the data set and dedicated medical experts. So basically what happens, the classification accuracy of any deep learning classifier is dependent on the quality and as well as the size of data set, and it requires the multiple expert opinion and to overcome the human error. And unavailability of qualified experts or the availability of sufficient cases are major issue in case of rare diseases. So though the diseases which are very rare, in that case it plays in that case it is causing a problem. So that is one challenge. Next is it requires the extensive inter-organization collaboration. So collaboration between hospitals, providers, vendors, and the scientists. It is extensively required in these application areas, and this collaboration may resolve the problem of data also. And next is privacy and legal issues, which is very important because it is much more complicated and difficult to share the medical data as compared to any other real world data. And data privacy is basically a social problem as well as the technical problem. And there is a act, basically there is one act which is called as Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, so which provides the legal rights to patients as well as which establishes some obligations for healthcare providers to protect their use. So there is one act also. So while using medical data, we need to take care of that thing also. uh, Data interoperability and data standards is there, because suppose if we'll use one type of data, it may not be standardized, so that is also a problem. And the most important problem is black box. So basically black box means we know lots of mathematics is involved in deep learning or in machine learning algorithm, but how it does, because we know it learns the feature by itself, but how that has been done, it is again very complex to understand. So these are the challenges which incurred while applying deep learning to the medical images. But still there are some open research issues and future directions. So the three trends that drive the deep learning revolution is availability of big data. Nowadays, data is available. Deep learning algorithms, we know the now GoogleNet and ResNet, which has a error rate of only 6%. So the algorithms, we are having the best algorithms. And this Siemens, Philips, Hitachi, and GE Healthcare, they have already made significant investment in the biomedical image processing. IBM Watson is working with more than 15 healthcare sectors. Then Google DeepMind Health is collaborating with NHS UK to apply deep learning on different healthcare applications on dataset of nearly 1.6 million patients. So you can just imagine 1.6 million patients data is available. G Healthcare partnership with Boston Children's Hospitals is working to create smart imaging technology for detecting pediatric brain disorder. So there are open research issues and future directions also. Future direction wherein we people can work, and then we can also provide some insight to this algorithm. So where we can have research in biomedical image processing. So the first one is diabetic retinopathy. So diabetic retinopathy is an eye disease which causes due to diabetes, and this results in eye blindness. So basically, over 400 million people are suffering from the diabetes, and 15% among them have the high risk of vision impairment and blindness loss. But this disease can be controlled if we'll go for early diagnosis. So if these early diagnosis is possible with the retinal screening test, then we can reduce this disease, diabetic retinopathy. But the problem here is that the manual process of detection of DR is difficult, and it is very time consuming due to unavailability of equipment and expertise. So here image processing plays a very important role. So if suppose we are having the image, fundus images of retinopathy, diabetic retinopathy, so the problems arises because of the diabetes are hemorrhages is there, abnormal growth of blood vessels, aneurysm portion is there, cotton wool stop, heart execute. So if we'll provide some, we'll develop some good image processing algorithms which will detect all those abnormalities in early stages, so we can have the good good for means that would be very helpful for the case of diabetic retinopathy. So here the machine learning and image processing algorithm plays a important role. But from where to start for this diabetic retinopathy? So there is a data set available for retina fundus images. This IPAX is there, eye picture and archives communication system. It consists of 10,000 retinal images. Then Misidor 2 dataset, it contains 1700 images that are collected for 874 patients. And again, publicly available dataset. Kaggle, we know nowadays Kaggle is very famous. So this data in Kaggle, we are having 80,000 digital fundus images. And then this drive and stare, these are these data sets wherein we can get the retinal images. Again, there is a challenge also, retinopathy online challenges, which wherein they provide the data set, and they ask us to give some algorithm which will give the good accuracy, and then this data set also. So we are having lots of work to do. The only thing is that we need to get some images, apply some deep learning algorithms, and give some good results. Then gastrointestinal disease detection is also one of the major problem. And herein these diseases are basically, we are having many varieties here: celiac, Crohn, malignant benign tumor, intestinal obstruction, duodenal ulcer, and irritable bowel syndrome. So here also image processing and machine learning plays a vital role for the diagnosis and analysis of all those diseases. And if we'll detect them early at the early stage, we can help medical professionals to make the fast decision for their treatment and treatment. So this is also one of the application area of biomedical images. Again, data set is available here. This we are having 10,000 wireless capsule endoscopy images for the detection of bleeding. And this ImageNet data set is there, where MRI image sequences are available for the gastrointestinal diseases. And now, due to this COVID pandemic, everywhere many researchers are working on COVID data set. So this COVID chest X-ray dataset is available, which contains the set of images from the publications of COVID-19 topic, and this is available on GitHub. So if you simply search GitHub with COVID X-ray images, you will get the chest X-ray images. So this data set contains chest X-ray as well as CT images. And now the situation is like this, that if we'll develop some deep learning algorithm by applying all those architectures and give some good results, so there is a wide chances or clear chances of publications in many elsewhere journals. So we can think of that also. But and it's a very fast publication. I have seen many papers which are submitted in the month of May, and then within 2 months they are accepted in many good journals, in like medical image analysis, in any other journals also. Then next data set is ChestSpot dataset, which has a large public dataset for chest radiography interpretation. And see here, it contains nearly 2 lakh images, chest radiograph images, and they are labeled in the for the presence of 14 subcategories. So 14 class problem is there, no finding edema and pneumonia. So again for COVID analysis. This Alzheimer disease, this is also incurable neurodegenerative disorder, which accounts for 70 to 80% dementia cases worldwide. And nowadays, many researchers are working on this Alzheimer disease, because in Alzheimer disease, many publications, if you see, they are limited only to binary classification. That means normal and abnormal. But Alzheimer disease, there are many stages. The stages are there: cognitively normal, then significant memory concern SMC, early mild cognitive impairment stage is there, mild cognitive impairment stage is there, then late mild cognitive impairment stage is there, and then lastly we are having Alzheimer disease. So in all total we are having nearly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 classes are there. But uh, the research on Alzheimer, it is related to binary classification. So very less work is been carried out in this domain area, Alzheimer disease. So as a researcher, we can think of that Alzheimer disease diagnosis, and we can apply the deep learning algorithm. But where to find the dataset? Dataset, it is available. Alzheimer Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, ADNI protocols are there. Then Pennsylvania University Image Calculation and Science Laboratory is there, where the dataset is available. Then University of Utah Scientific Calculations and Imaging Institute is there. So in all these three sources are there where the Alzheimer disease data set is available. Now, these are the areas wherein we can apply the deep learning algorithm. We can have the biomedical image processing. But the evaluation matrix which we can use after applying our algorithms, there are various models, evaluation parameters. Jaccard index is there, confusion matrix, accuracy, precision and recall, F1 score, which will decide the robustness or accuracy of your model or of your algorithm. So Jaccard index, it basically gives you the similarity between your output and the ground truth output, which is actual label and predicted label. So it is basically a ratio of intersection to union between the two sets. So, and again, it is in the range of 0 to 1. So 0 means no similarity, and 1 indicates the highest accuracy, highest similarity. Then confusion matrix is widely used for your algorithms. So we are having ground truth associated with the data set and your results. So here this will be a positive and positive. Then this is positive, negative. Okay. So that will give you the false positive. So and first is true positive. So that means in ground truth you are having positive, and your result has also given you the positive. So that will be true positive. The third one is false negative. That means ground truth says that it is a positive, but your result is saying negative. So that will be false negative. And ground truth is saying negative, and your result is also saying negative. That means it is a true negative. So based on this TP, FP, FN, and TN, we can have sensitivity and specificity by using this formula. And the positive predictive value, which is nothing but the precision, and negative predictive value, which is nothing but the recall. So all these parameters can be used to evaluate the performance of your um, model or of your algorithm. So the basic definitions are given here. True positive means predictive values are correctly predicted as actual positive. False positive means predicted values incorrectly predicted as actual positive. That is negative values predicted as positive. Then false negative, positive values are predicted as negative, and true negative are predictive values correctly predicted as actual negative. So as an example, suppose we are having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 results with you. So actual results were this, and you predicted like this. Okay, so you can clearly see here it is P and here it is P. That means it is true positive. Okay, but if your actual result is positive and you are predicting as negative, so that will be false negative. Actual result is false, but you are predicting it as positive, then that will be false positive. And this one is fourth. This actual result is negative, you are predicting it as negative, then that will be true negative. Okay, so this is just the repetition of first. So for this data set or for this results, how many TP you are having? You are having TP2, true negative 1, false negative, false positive 1, and false negative 1. Okay. And this P and F means suppose you are going for 2-class classification, then P, and suppose you are going for any disease classification, that whether the disease is cancerous or non-cancerous, then P will indicate non-cancerous and F will indicate cancerous. Or if you are going for the classification of normal and abnormal, then P will be your normal image and F will be your abnormal image. So based on these results, you can calculate the other parameters also. So this accuracy is one of the parameter. Again, based on the TPT and FPFN, we can calculate the accuracy. So accuracy is the proportion of true results among the total number of cases being examined. Then precision, TP upon TP plus FP. So precision is a valid choice of evaluation matrix when we want to be very sure of your prediction. Like for example, if you are building a system to predict if we should decrease the credit limit on a particular account, and we want to be very sure about our prediction, so or it may result in customer dissatisfaction. So in that case, we can use precision. If you want to be more sure about anything. Then recall, recall is TP upon TP plus FN. So when to use recall? When recall is valid choice of evaluation when we want capture as many positive values. So when quantity is matter, then we should go for recall. But if you want more surety, then we can use precision. Okay. And then F1 score is there, which balances out the precision and recall, and this F1 score is in between 0 to 1. So it is basically a harmonic mean of precision and recall. So by using this formula, we can find the F1 score of your algorithm. Now where we can find the research in related to biomedical image processing. So there is a grand challenge. If we'll click on here, we'll get many challenges in every domain. CT scan images are there, medical MRI images are there, many other. Okay, so this in these grand challenges, we can get information about data set, what algorithms they are using, everything. So this is one option. Then Kaggle, we know machine learning and data science community is there. You can join this community, and therein you can find the data set as well as the codes of previous algorithms. So the link is given over here. Due to time limit, I'm not going to open this. Otherwise, I would have shown the challenges which are available for medical imaging, medical image processing. The toolboxes which we can use is Anaconda is there with the Python 3.7 scientific computing. PyTorch is used for deep learning. So with again a PyTorch with we can be combined with Jupyter's Anaconda, and then we can use the algorithms for of deep learning. MATLAB is also there. The deep learning toolboxes can be used, and then CUDA library for NVIDIA GPU. So for specifically for deep learning algorithms, as we want high processing, so this NVIDIA GPU is there. Then these are some references, journal and conferences where we can get information about machine learning, deep learning, workshops. These are a few names are cited here. Now that was all about where we can search for the machine, I mean, where we can search for biomedical image processing. So if you are basically interested, or if you go on do research in biomedical image processing, so many open research problems are there. We can go through it. So and lastly, just in 2 minutes, I will be covering one case study, which is brain tumor type detection. So we have used magnetic resonance imaging, wherein it plays a very important role in diagnosis of brain tumor and its type. So we are having benign and malignant as a tumor type, and there are many types of tumor, but mostly commons are astrocytoma, meningioma, and glioma. And what we have done, we have used two types here, meningioma and glioma. So from the hospital itself, we got the images of meningioma and glioma. So images we obtain, and then we apply some pre-processing, then segmentation, feature extractions we are done. So for pre-processing, we have done this process. That means we retain only cerebral tissues of brain images. So we remove the skull of the brain, and then we go for segmentation. So for segmentation, we are used stationary wavelet transform, feature extraction. So see here, feature extraction has been done. So this is basically, actually, this is the old paper, the old work which we have done. So now in deep learning, we don't require this type of feature extraction. After feature extractions, we have applied self-organizing map and then watershed segmentation to segment the image, to segment the tumor. And after this, again, whatever tumor portion is obtained, we need to classify it as whether it was belonging to meningioma or to glioma. So again, we went for feature extraction. So we extracted these features: contrast, correlation, energy, and homogeneity. So we could have been, we saw that there is a difference of these features in meningioma and glioma. And depending on those features, the classification has been performed by using support vector machine. So these results was obtained. And again, see here, there was a very limited data set available with us. And with those data set, we could have obtained these much of accuracy. So this work was carried out just with the limited source of data. Okay. So, so this is all about my presentation. And thank you for
Thanks,
the,
ma'am. Thanks a lot. We'll proceed with the QA session now.
yes.
I request Dr. Santosh Swagat sir to proceed with the QA session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, madam. Some questions from audience. Okay. Hello. May I audible, madam?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Huh.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes, yes. First question is, what is the difference between max pooling and global average pooling?
Yes,
Uh,
global average pooling, we use it in semantic segmentation. So, semantic segmentation, that global average pooling is used, sir.
okay, and can this global average pooling replace FC layer in CNN classifier?
Full global average pooling replaces,
Replace FC layer
huh. So
in
in,
CNN classifier.
uh, okay, huh. So FC layer is not required. In normal CNN, we require the FC layer for concatenation. That means for flat operation. So in semantic segmentation, there is no need of FC layer. So as far as
Okay.
my knowledge is concerned, means I just watched one tutorial of Devdut sir, and wherein I saw that there was no need of FC layer in semantic segmentation.
Okay, another question is, why does a convolutional neural network work better with image data?
Yes, sir. Actually, the features means the filters when they arrange in as a two-dimensional features. Like one example was AlexNet. So the features were looking like a Gabor filter features, wherein they could have obtained they obtain the ages like features. They obtain some color information. They obtain some shape information. So, and that's why an image processing, we know the ages and the shape features, they plays a very important role. So by observing the LXNet kernel features, so that was the observation, and hence these CNN works very good in image processing.
Okay, another question is, what are the different features in wavelet domain? Those can be used for texture classification.
Yes, GLCM features are there. Gray level co-occurrence matrix we can use. Um, RLCM features are there. So in wavelet transform, we can use energy, energy contrast.
Ah,
So all those features, all those texture features can be used.
okay. Okay, thank you very much, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, one and all. I, Dr. S.C. Vagas, on behalf of Rajeshi Shaw College of Engineering, Sathode, Pune, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to dynamic personality, Dr. Mrs. Yogita Chitril, for sharing his valuable thoughts. Madam, thank you very much for exploring building blocks of CNN, deep learning in medical image, multi-layer perception neural network, market scenario of machine learning, diabetic retinopathy, and different tools availability for this work. This session has given informative in this regard. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, participants, for this patience
Yes,
learning.
yes, yes,
Thank you.
madam. Over to Pranav, sir.
Thank you, August sir. Thank you once again, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So there is one instruction for the participants. The next session will start at sharp 2 o'clock. So please join 5 minutes early. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Bisikar ma'am,
Yes, sir. Hello.
shall I end the meeting?
Yes, you can end the meeting, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Yogita madam. It was nice session. Very informative.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for inviting me. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.